All right. Well, why don't for people who don't know you, can you give us kind of a brief, like, 2-minute background about you and your political background and your work history and all that?
My name's Bill Adams. I came to Klamath Falls in 1972 to attend OIT. It was actually OTI then, and while I was there it changed to OIT. At any rate, graduated from OIT and opened my own business, which at the time was Pelican City Auto Wreckers. We now operate as one-stop auto wreckers and U-Pullet auto wreckers. We're out in the Pelican City area, obviously. And I've been doing that for 44 years. When I was 30 years old, so that would have been 1984, I ran for city council, and I was elected to city council. I was on city council for 2 terms. I didn't run again at that time. I actually ran for county commissioner, won the primary, lost the general election. Didn't do anything for the next 8 years, and then I decided to run for council again, and I served on council for another 16 years. I was on the city budget committee for the 8 years in between the 2 city council deals, and that's kind of the extent of it. I think I stepped on some toes when I ran for council the last time, and I lost the election, primarily I think because of that. And I do have differing views than probably some of the people in the community, but I am a fairly conservative person, and I like to feel that if I'm spending the public's money, that it's something I would spend my own money on, and if it's not something I'd spend my own money on, then maybe it's not the thing to do.
Yeah. So after all those years in council, why run for mayor? What about this position, and why was it the restoration?
Well, some of the same things that bothered me while I was on council are still occurring. One of them is the airport. And while for years we did everything we could do to try and pump the airport up. We actually had passenger service for most of the time I was involved with the city, till we got into the last few years when the airline that we chose to come in here went bankrupt. After a year or so of trying to get an airline in here, I said, hey, we're spending money on something. There's no reason to be spending this money. I said, with the way everything is right now, we're not going to get an airline in here. Since the COVID-19 thing, the airlines have been hurt really badly. Because we don't have an essential air service designation for this airport, we basically are not going to get air service because the money is not there to pay somebody to come in here and do it and make up the difference in what they don't make on flights. That's one of the things that I'd like to see, and I don't think there's a reason to lose $1.2 million a year on the airport. It's not a mandated service. And I'm not saying we should close the airport, because there is stuff that's going on out the airport. I mean, primarily the Guard. And the Guard puts a lot of money into our community, and I want to see the Air Guard continue to operate. I'd like to see our FBO continue to operate, and I'd like to see that the private pilots that are out there are able to have an airport to use. But I don't think we need to be spending the money on personnel out there that we are spending right now. I think we can do it for a lot less money. That being said, I mean, there's been some other things, and well, actually, on the airport, the money that goes into the airport, a lot of it comes from our tourism dollars. And it seems to me that if you don't have passengers flying in, spending tourism dollars on an airport is not the appropriate place to be spending the money. And I know the downtown has struggled to have enough funding to keep everything going now that the downtown urban renewal district has disappeared. So I feel like some of that money that's going to the airport should be going to the downtown to keep the downtown up, because that's where tourism is happening for the most part. And we've got all of our tourism, our Chamber of Commerce and other things. While they're not in the immediate downtown, they're right adjacent to downtown. And the downtown urban renewal district, put that building up, or didn't put it up, but we remodeled the building, and I think it's worked out really well. It's made a convenient location for a number of groups that are nonprofits that work for this community, to be in one place. And I have to say, I was on the urban renewal committee at the time. We decided to move forward with that project. I think it's been a really worthwhile project.
Just kind of one thought on that is, you know, a mayor's job is different from a city councilor, right? They have, you know, sort of specific projects might be useful for a city councilor, but a mayor has their hands in everything kind of thing. So I wonder what about that position?
Well, I think the person needs to be looking at everything that's going on in the community, and not just in the city, but in the community, because quite truthfully, it doesn't feel like the city has been involved in the rest of the community for the last year or two. There hasn't been a city-county meeting with the county commissioners in over a year, and which means they're not really talking to each other. Yeah, maybe they're talking on the phone, or the city manager's talking to somebody one-on-one, but they're not having a meeting where anybody can do anything as far as ideas and stuff are concerned. And one of the other things community-wide that has really astounded me this year is the fact that the city never came out in support of the farmers who didn't get water this year. I mean, that's something that's just, to me, that's a fatal mistake for the city, because everybody in this community, and that includes the farmers, shops inside the city of Klamath Falls or outside, but in the urban growth boundary. And we need to keep those people in mind, and we need to do what we can to support them in what they're doing for a living. So, and there's a number of things like that where I think that we need to be involved in a bunch of different stuff. Another thing that I would like to see, and it's kind of been my goal, and that is to see a consolidation of some of the services that we're providing in this community. About 30 years ago, maybe a little more than that, we had 2 fire districts in this town. And we were struggling financially to fund both the fire district and our police department, our emergency services. And at that time, the district was kind of having similar type problems. We had 3 fire stations in the city. Fire District 1 had 3 stations. I said, well, why don't we talk to them about consolidating the 2 districts? And the answer was, oh, they won't go for that, it just won't work. I said, well, how about if I go to one of their meetings and talk to them? And I did, and I mean, it took a little bit of time to do that, but I got the ball rolling, and we've finally consolidated both those districts. We cut back to 4 fire stations from 6 at the time. Instead of running 2-man crews on fire trucks out to fires, we were running 3-man crews, which is a lot safer. I mean, when you only got a 2-man crew, one guy can't hardly go into burning structure because there isn't somebody to go in and go after him if something happens. You got to have a 3rd person there. So I think that's been very beneficial, and I think it's saved the community a lot of money. I would like to see the same thing happen with some of the other services that we're providing in the community. I mean, we could be doing it with our sewer service. We could be doing it with the patrols and the policing inside the urban growth boundary. Doesn't make sense to really have 2 planning departments inside the urban growth boundary because the rules should all be the same.
So you're talking about city and county? City
and county inside the urban growth boundary. Outside the urban growth boundary is a different story, and that's primarily the county should be handling it. And it would be my preference that the county handled all the planning.
As mayor, would you have the authority to push that idea?
I don't know that the mayor has the authority to do anything, but you have the ability to talk about it and have people maybe listen to what's going on. And I just think there's some stuff like that needs to be looked at.
You mentioned sort of stepping on people's toes at council and your last term there and into the next election. Mayor is sort of a leadership role, right, for the council, and have to, make sure that that's a productive space. So can you talk a little bit about, how your style, and if you sort of learned anything from that experience, and if you think you can keep that to be a productive sort of working relationship?
I think that I can be productive. I mean, I've been involved in the community, so I know the players and just about everything that's out there, and I think that helps me out quite a bit. And I'm willing to listen to what other people have to say. I may not agree with it, but I'm willing to listen to them and try and get things put together so that this community can move forward. I mean, I think we're looking at some troubled times, and I really feel fortunate that we don't have the problems that Portland has had for the last 3.5, 4 months. And I'd like to make sure that it doesn't get that way here. So I think we need to have everybody working together in the community, talking to, people in the community talking to one another.
Speaking of your last term, there was a point where you actually got up and you got to the podium and you said, I will sue you guys. You were planning to sue the city. Did that create sort of a burned bridge, and how do you rebuild? I
am sure that has created some animosity, and I know there's going to be there's some changes on council. There's going to be a change at least on council members at this time, and I think probably the biggest problem that I've had with things has been from the administrative portion, not necessarily with the council members themselves. I feel like, and one of the things that I would like to see done, I don't think that the rules and regulations for building something in this community make a whole lot of sense. In some cases, that's not all cases, but that's some cases, and we had a number of things come before us on city council that were really goofy stuff. And that's one of the reasons I'd like to see the planning all the same in different areas. We had one in particular. We had a person that wanted to put a garden shed on their property. They were in Mills Edition. Their access for parking was an unpaved alley. They had no garage, so they didn't have any place to put any of their lawnmower, any of their equipment or anything away. And in order for them to put in a garden shed, our rules and regulations required them to pave their driveway. Not pave the alleyway, but to pave their driveway. And obviously at this point in time, and it was a contractor that actually brought this before us, it didn't make sense. And I don't think that they were ever allowed to go ahead and move forward and build something like that. And it just seems a little bit ridiculous that you put that kind of rules and regulations in place. They have, and I don't know if that's exactly been changed or not, fencing in a residential area. The requirement for fences was you couldn't build a fence over 42 inches high. Okay, now if you go down to Diamonds, you go down to Home Depot, they sell 4-foot fencing. That's the standard height, and that's about the right kind of height fencing to keep kids from climbing over, to keep dogs in your yard, that kind of thing. And chain link fence you can see through, so I don't see but at any rate, you couldn't build a fence that was 4 foot high. You had to build one that was 3.5 foot high. So you would have to special order your fencing material in order to do that. And the most ridiculous thing about it was when you asked the planning department about it, they say, well, we'll give you the fence permit, tell us you're going to build at 42 inches, but we're not going to come look at it. In other words, you can build a 48-inch high fence, but don't tell us you're doing it. And instead of changing the rules. I mean, it just...
One other question too, I know Sky Lakes has been a partner with the city on lots of different things. That has also kind of been a bone of contention for you.
It has.
See it, and I just wondered how you plan to work with Sky Lakes as a partner as mayor, since it seems like they will continue to be in the news and in that partnership role.
Well, there may be some adversity between the two of us, and that's kind of the way it is, because I don't necessarily agree with everything they're doing, and I don't agree with some of the partnership stuff that the city has done.
Is there a way you can work?
Paul Stewart and I talk to each other and we're cordial, and I do agree with some of the stuff he's done. Particularly, they run a good hospital. I don't have a problem with what the medical care that they provide. I feel